All right, welcome everybody to this month's community meeting. Every month we get together and hear from the various people working on PatternFly and working with PatternFly to hear updates and goings on and possibly raise questions. We had our last community meeting at the beginning of this month, a little more recently than usual, so we don't have quite as many updates as usual. So hopefully we have time for questions if anybody has any. Before I dive in, I'm also going to remind people here, in case you're not aware, that tomorrow we have our PatternFly office hours. Those are hosted every 3 weeks after each release in order to just pose any questions you might have for the PatternFly team, whether it's about issues that you've opened or uh, questions about how to use components or anything like that. So those are tomorrow at the same time at 11 a.m. Eastern. And you can look at the PatternFly Slack for the link to join or reach out to me if you'd like an invitation. That's tomorrow. All right, so let's dive into today's meeting. I mentioned our agenda is a little shorter than usual, so we have just a few updates from our various teams. And before we jump into those, I will let you know that at the very beginning of this week, so I guess today's only Tuesday, Monday, we had a release go live. So we have some new release notes that were published just yesterday. And these are the release notes for the HTML and CSS core repository. So we're not going to run through all of these item by item, but feel free to take a look. And at the end, if we have some extra time, you are welcome to ask any questions about these updates or any others. And we also have the release notes, which are, I'll say with a little bit of pride, particularly long this time. So I'll scroll down slowly. You can see just how many components and issues were updated and taken care of. Still scrolling. So there's a lot to look at. And if you have any questions and you want to peek at that at the end of this meeting, you probably have an opportunity to. The links to these release notes are in the slide. And yeah, so that's the latest update for the latest milestone. And without any further ado, I'm going to hand it off over to Michael Coker to hear some updates from some highlights of what's going on in the core repository. So I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you, Nicole. Let's see. Share. All right. So just a couple of updates that we made recently that could kind of go under the radar if you weren't paying attention to the release notes. So I figure this is a good place to kind of call that out. First off is not necessarily related to Red Hat font here, but the pre and code HTML elements, so pre-formatted text and code elements, they previously just used whatever the browser default was for a monospace font family. We have specific components where we implement the monospace font family from PatternFly. And that's like, I think log viewers using that, like the code editor, that sort of thing. But those HTML elements didn't have any sort of specific styling. So we got a request recently to update those elements to use the PatternFly monospaced font stack, which makes a lot of sense. So we added that. So if you're using pre and code elements that are not styled for what font family to use, you might notice that the font family changes from the browser default to PatternFly's monospace stack, which by default is using a Liberation Mono font stack. And so it's not specific to the Red Hat font. Red Hat has a font that we use in PatternFly, but recently the Red Hat font supports a monospace font. So they introduced this along with variable fonts and all sorts of other really cool stuff. And so that's where this Red Hat font page comes in. So just to expand on that idea that you're going to see the monospace font update and those elements, you can opt in to the Red Hat monospace font. We don't enable it by default because the presentation of it, even though it is a monospace font, is just a bit different than the Liberation Mono font stack. I believe that the Red Hat monospace font takes up a small amount of extra horizontal space, and we don't want to just throw that in um, and without a product opting in case you had formatted text that you didn't want to wrap to new lines and things like that. So anyways, here's a class that you can add to the body element of your page. Get the Red Hat monospace font, which looks great with Red Hat text, Red Hat display, and then try that out with your pre and code tags. So that's the first update. And then the second update is just a small change that we made to the form component. So the form by default just is a block type element. It takes up whatever space it's in. Are you going to say something, Nicole?
You might need to change which tab you're sharing.
Yeah, I don't really have a good demo of
Oh,
this
okay.
of the form, so
No problem.
but I do have something cool I'll share.
Cool.
I think it's even better. So so we'll go right in here. And so by default, the form is just a regular block element. It's going to consume whatever horizontal space that it's in. And we have a variation called PFM limit width, I think is the class name. And then in the React component, it's I think is like is width limited or something like that. That's going to apply this class. And by default, it would shrink the max width of the form down to a reasonable size, so that if you have a 32-inch display and you got your browser set to the width of the display for max productivity, and you have a text input for your zip code, that text input may be as big as the display, and that's not necessarily ideal. And so we have this modifier to limit the width of forms to make it something that's reasonable for content. And the previous width of the forms was 500 pixels, which we realized was never actually the design intent and was limiting the width of the form just a bit too much. So we updated that value from 500 to 880. So you'll see that in your forms if you're using this width limited variation. And in case that's not a change that you like or wanted to opt out of, we have this CSS variable that you can customize, and you can just set this on your form, maybe give it a class name, and then assign this custom property here, and then just give it a different width, whatever you feel like would be reasonable. You can go back to 500, you can do something different, and then actually, I think while I've got it here, I just want to. I believe I had updated the React form component as well. Let's just check on the fly. Um, and added a prop to be able to control that as well. Let's see. Yeah, okay, so the prop is max width. So that keeps you basically from having to set a CSS variable, right? Or write that. You can just, when you define the form, you got a custom max width that you want to use. It'll basically just define that variable for you. And yeah, and so that's it. Those are my updates for today. Thank you.
Awesome. I think we also have a couple updates from one of the PatternFly devs about work she's done in the core repo, and that's Jenny. If you've never met Jenny, she's great. She does both work in the React repo and in the core repo. That's something we all aspire to do.
Thank you, Nicole. Yeah, so a couple exciting updates in core. Let me just share my screen. So, okay, I believe I am sharing now. There we go. Okay, so the first update is to the divider component. So this was sort of a collaborative effort between me, Michael Coker, and Matt Nolting, and we have added support, breakpoint support for divider to change form at various breakpoints. So we have this new variant here now. You see horizontal on large and vertical on large. So if we update the size of the screen, we will see that the divider orientation has now changed. So what was horizontal on large is now vertical, since we hit a breakpoint for small, and then vertical on large is now horizontal. So that is exciting. And I've also added support for that in React, and that looks something like this. So now we have this demo here for switch orientation at various breakpoints. So this is the React demo. We see if we make the screen a bit larger, it changes to a horizontal divider, and now we have a vertical divider as well. The next change I worked on in core was updates to these switch states. So previously we had some different color schemes, but it looks like we wanted something switched around. So what was initially the disabled color is now the off color, and there's now an extra option for a check and a label switch. So that looks a bit like this now. So these are the React demos, which I also added support for in React. So now you can see the disabled state is now a bit lighter than what it used to be. And we now also have a checked with label variant to the switch. And that also exists in the core demo as well. And yeah, those are my updates for this time.
All right, great, thank you. All right, next up on the agenda are the updates and the highlights from the React repo from Titani. I think you're still muted, Titani.
Thank you, Nicole. I would have gone on forever. Yeah, so I was saying that I'm just going to share some of the highlights of the work that we've been doing in the React repo in the last month. Some of the bigger epics that we've been working toward are the conversion of the examples from JavaScript to TypeScript. So we've been working on that for a while now, and the work continues there. I added a link to the epic issue if you'd like to see the progress we've made. And another big effort that has been going on is migrating our unit test over to React testing library. And we've made great progress there. And again, there's a link for you to check the progress that we've made there. And part of the reason for doing this is for supporting React 18. So this will remove a big blocker in upgrading to React 18. And then also we've been working on a lot of accessibility improvements. Just a few of highlights of the ones we've been working on are menu append to examples. We've added some examples on how you would make a component accessible when you use the menu append to prop. And also we've added some keyboard accessibility to the drawer splitter. We've added some examples to helper text component, accessible examples to helper text component. And we've made the tile selection state accessible as well. And then another big effort we're working toward is support for React 18. And in addition to the React testing library work we've been working on, Jan Koops, the Nasser contributor, has also been helping with the efforts to upgrade to React 18. And I put a link to the epic here so you can see the progress that we're making there. So those are the major, like the bigger issues that we're working toward in the React repo right now. And that's all I have.
All right, thank you. Next, we're going to get some updates on work being done on the patternfly.org website from Evan.
Hey, yep, thanks, Nicole. I don't have slides to share because this is work that we are kicking off or in the process of currently. So typically we like to talk about these things once they're wrapped up, so we have a little bit more meat to share, but I'm really excited about some bigger efforts that we're making. So I wanted to just kind of get the excitement out there as well. The first one is, Titani mentions a focus on accessibility for some different components that we have. we are putting that same focus on our documentation website. So a few weeks ago, actually, the UXD dev team did a bit of a bug bash on patternfly.org. We really like to build all of our components in an accessible way, and we want to make sure we bring that same focus to the docs where we're actually hosting these components. And so, we took a look through just some of the issues that currently reside on our website and are working to be both transparent about where our current status is and the progress that we're making, the improvements we're making there, and also just to be able to hold ourselves accountable as well. I know we help a lot of products focus on accessibility and kind of just grow their knowledge there, and so our I guess dog fooding our own material, if you will. And so out of that bug bash, we've practiced using some different tools. So Axe is kind of our primary tool, the Axe plugin, but there's some tools from IBM and some other tools as well, and kind of took a look at some of the differences and pros and cons of each. As a team, we will be focusing on both publicizing a report of where our website lives and chipping away at those issues as well. So we can stay tuned for some updates to come from that. The next thing is PatternFly extensions. So currently we have an extensions section in the main nav on our website on the left side there. It hosts both community extensions as well as UXD extensions, so some that are a little bit more closer to our team and built and maintained by different UXD members or Red Hat teams. And currently the extensions are a mix of some docs that live on our website, some links to code or external repos, and examples through other means. And we're really kind of focusing on creating a common experience around extensions, just like we have with our components and everything else on our website. So we've got a small team who's looking into pulling documentation from external sources. So if another team, let's say, creates an extension and they want to contribute it back to PatternFly, we want to also enable them to utilize the same documentation code and resources that we have. So we're currently looking into how we can actually pull in extension docs into the patternfly.org website and enable other teams to pull in the patternfly.org theme and be able to apply that to build up a local workspace with our docs as well. So that effort is underway and making quick strides. So thanks to everyone working on that. We'll keep you updated there, but we're excited to have kind of hopefully a user-friendly way that other teams can contribute their extensions and take advantage of the documentation that we've already kind of built from the ground up. The last thing here is information architecture studies. So we've talked about this a couple times in the past. We've done a couple studies just around the way our documentation is organized, the navigation is split up, ideas like what is a demo versus an example. And so while we've done a lot of research on that, I'm excited that we've gotten some concrete takeaways and we're planning next steps, whether it is some updates to the website just to reword or to tweak where certain things live based on feedback that we found from users, or some ideas that are going through design currently. We've got a big focus on standardizing our examples and trying to reduce the page length in some cases where we've got a lot of great content, but you kind of have trouble finding it if it's buried, amongst 4 pages of examples. So we are moving forward with kind of next steps from that study, and we'll be rolling out some of those improvements over the next few months. So we'll make sure to report back on each of those 3 areas, our accessibility improvements, pulling extension docs onto our site, and the improvements to the information architecture from those research studies as we start crossing those issues off. But just wanted to kind of bring that awareness here and let you know we're excited to be working on those 3 fronts. Unless there's any questions, I'll pass back to you, Nicole.
Where are you eating?
Sorry,
Yeah,
where am I eating?
Yeah, where are you?
I had a feeling of it. So if anybody happens to live in Richmond, Virginia, Red Hat actually has a managed office here that's based out of a co-working space. And so I'm actually set up in one of the common areas in the co-working space right now, although it is set up with booths and tables, so it definitely looks like I'm in a cafeteria.
There you go.
Yeah.
Fun.
Thanks for throwing the hard questions my way, though.
All right. Awesome. All right. The last item on the agenda is just a preview from Matt about what we are currently planning on and working on. So I'll hand it over to you, Matt.
Thanks, Nicole. I'll share my screen out. And just a preview of things that we have in the works. First, starting with the design team, we have been currently doing some work on looking at what a next generation PatternFly look and feel might look like, and hopefully we'll be able to start to share something soon. But this is again not anything that's probably going to affect us in the short term, but we're taking a long range look at like how will PatternFly evolve over time. We've also been spending a lot of time lately looking at patterns for filtering. Do we need to make any changes, improvements to the filtering recommendations we've made? We have a lot of products that are implementing filters of different types, and trying to take a deeper look at like what a good sort of common set of filters might look like. We also have done some work on ideating around a query builder. We have some preliminary designs for that you can find linked into this issue here. We feel at this point we have a good sort of straw horse for a design for a visual query builder. Right now, we are looking for projects that have a need for implementing a query builder to perhaps partner with us in doing some type of prototype proof of concept where we can try to get more feedback on how well this works out. So if your projects are in need of such a component, we'd love to hear from you and talk more about what your needs are. I think Evan referenced the PatternFly website work. The design team has been involved in that, and trying to take a look at navigation component pages and also improvements to the home page. So those are things that we expect to be rolling out over the course of the next year. And then finally, taking a look at chart accessibility, especially around use of colors on charts, and hopefully I'll have something to share out on that soon. On the development side, some of these things were already alluded to in Michael and Titani's presentations, but we do still have an ongoing effort to refactor our drop-down components using a composable approach, and that's something that we try to make incremental progress on over the course of each release. Looking at our drag and drop solution and perhaps reconsidering our current implementation to be a little bit more robust and accessible. In the next release, we hope to be rolling out dynamic tabs, sort of similar to browser tabs, where you can add and remove tabs from the tab set. Working on a dark theme search input that can be used in the masthead. Some efforts on migrating our React testing from Enzyme to React testing library, And as others have mentioned, having a big focus on accessibility improvements for lots of different components. And that link kind of this links out to a list of accessibility improvements, issues that we're working on in the upcoming release. So we're trying to put a lot of priority on accessibility over the next few months. And I think that about covers it. Anybody have any questions? Okay, if not, I'll hand it back to you, Nicole. Yep, go ahead, John.
Yeah, I had a quick question on the dark theme. Is that switchable by the user, or they get light?
Well, this isn't dark. This isn't dark theme for the application as a whole, which we are working on, and we're kind of have a approach where we're partnering with specific teams to implement dark theme on a per product basis. This is just a search, and we had a request for somebody who wanted to put a search input component into the masthead, for example, which has a dark background, and we currently didn't have support for that. So this is just isolated to a search input that works in a dark on a dark background.
Oh, okay, great, thanks.
Any other questions? Okay, not back to you, Nicole.
All right. That's all of the updates we have on the agenda today. So we actually do have so much extra time for any other questions that anyone might have for anybody on this call. So feel free to raise your hand or unmute if you have any questions.
Who is the who did the code editor in PatternFly?
Who did the code editor? So I helped build the sort of wrapper for the Monaco code editor that we use in PatternFly. So if you have specific questions about the PatternFly implementation of the Monaco code editor, I might be the person you'd want to talk to. Yeah.
All right. Yeah, we were having trouble getting the code icon to appear in our build.
Oh.
For...
Okay.
Hey, John, I found it's a problem with our server, actually. We're not serving the font correctly.
Ah, okay. Never mind.
Yeah. No problem. Yeah, but if you have any questions after this about the code editor in general, you can definitely ping me on Slack or shoot me an email. I'm happy to hopefully work through problems with that.
Oh.
It it uses Monaco. So sometimes there are going to be problems that are Monaco specific that I could maybe help you investigate, but yeah, in general.
I used to work with Monaco directly, and that's a pain in the butt. And I'm glad that somebody has wrapped it.
Yeah. Okay, good.
And
yeah.
it's taken over that pain.
Every time someone asks about it, I'm like, I can maybe help.
Yeah.
So it was a little intimidating, but so far so good. Yeah, let me know if you have any other questions.
Okay.
Yeah, and I will remind you that tomorrow we have, or everybody here, that we have office hours. So that's a great place to bring coding questions or any PatternFly questions to the PatternFly team. They're open door. So usually what we do is we have like a working list of topics that people want to bring to office hours. So you can kind of put your name or your question on that list, and we'll make sure that we address those kind of at the top of the hour. But we usually get through those relatively quickly. And then but then the PatternFly team tends to stay, at least some of us stay on the call through the whole hour, kind of open door, so that if anyone has anything that they think of throughout the time, or if they just want some, kind of one-on-one attention, showing up later in the hour might be a great option for people as well. So at the end of the slide deck, we have a list of links. One to join the PatternFly mailing list. I will send a recording of this meeting as well as the slides with all of the links in PDF form to the PatternFly mailing list. That's where we send out updates regarding larger PatternFly efforts. We have a quarterly newsletter, things like that. And we also have a public PatternFly community calendar that you could import onto your personal calendar if you'd like to get reminders and see any updates to the PatternFly community meeting as it's scheduled, projected PatternFly release windows, other community meetings we host like office hours and things like that. There's my contact information as the community meeting coordinator and a reminder about the office hours again. So that's all we have. Thank you everybody for your time, and we will see you next month.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Nicole.
Thank you.